Hello everyone, today we are going to discuss about cerebellum. Cerebellum is the largest part of hindbrain which is situated in posterior cranial fossa. You can see this is the posterior cranial fossa. It is situated in posterior cranial fossa. This is the cerebellum and it is covered superiorly by tentorium cerebelli. Here this whitish color uh, area is the tentorium cerebelli. It is an extension of dura mater. Cerebellum lies posterior to fourth ventricle. Here is the fourth ventricle, pons and medulla oblongata. It is ovoid in shape and constricted in its median part. In cerebellum, there are two cerebellar hemispheres which is joined by narrow median vermis. Here, these are the two cerebellar hemispheres and this is the narrow median vermis. Cerebellum is divided into three lobes as anterior lobe, middle lobe or posterior lobe, flocculonodular lobe. This is the anterior lobe, this is the posterior lobe, this is the flocculonodular lobe. This is the mid-sagittal section of the cerebellum. This is the superior view of the cerebellum and this is the anterior lobe, this is the posterior lobe and this is the flocculonodular lobe. You can see anterior lobe is separated from the posterior lobe by primary fissure. This is the primary fissure. Here, this is the primary fissure. Then, posterior lobe and flocculonodular lobe is separated by posterolateral fissure. This is the posterolateral fissure. Here, this is the posterolateral fissure. Anterior lobe is seen on superior surface. Here, this is the superior and this is the inferior. Therefore, anterior lobe can be seen on superior surface. It is separated from the middle lobe, as I said earlier, by primary fissure. Then the posterior lobe, here you can see green color part is the posterior lobe. You can see it is the largest part of the cerebellum. Then flocculonodular lobe is posterior to ovulonodular fissure. Also, there is a horizontal fissure. This is the horizontal fissure. You can see it is a deep fissure which is found along the margin of the cerebellum, which separate inferior and superior surfaces of the cerebellum. This horizontal fissure separates superior surface and inferior surface. Let's have a look on structure of cerebellum. In the outer is the gray matter of the cerebellum and inner is the white matter. This outer gray matter is called as cerebellar cortex. Then inner white matter, intracerebellar nuclei can be seen in white matter. Cerebellar cortex is the gray matter and intracerebellar nuclei can be seen in white matter. If you cut the cerebellum in a median plane, you can see a highly branched structure or highly branched appearance which is known as arbor vitae. Highly branched appearance which is known as arbor vitae. You can see this is the highly branched appearance and it is known as arbor vitae. Outer gray matter has a uniform structure throughout its content. In the cerebellar cortex, there are three layers as outermost layer is the molecular layer. This is the molecular layer and then Purkinje cell layer. Next layer is Purkinje cell layer. Here this is Purkinje cell layer. Then inner granular layer. This is granular layer. In the external layer or molecular layer, there are two types of neurons which is known as satellite cells and basket cells. Outer there are satellite cells. Here these are satellite cells and inner there are basket cells. Here green color ones are satellite cells, blue color ones are basket cells. Also there are neuroglia. Thin axons run parallel to the long axons of folia. From this side, this is the molecular layer, this is the Purkinje cell layer, and this is the granular layer. Then you have Purkinje cell layer, which is the middle layer. It has Golgi type 1 neurons and flask shape. It is arranged in single cell layer. You can see this layer is arranged in single cell layer. Dendrites of these cells, these are the dendrites. These dendrites pass into molecular layer. Then the axons goes to the white matter of the cerebellum. Here, this is the axon. It is goes into white matter of the cerebellum, pass in granular layer. This is the granular layer. It passes granular layer and goes into white matter. Then the axons terminate in one of the intracerebellar nuclei. Then you have internal granular layer. This is the internal granular layer. It contains Golgi cells and neuroglia cells. Golgi cells and neuroglia cells. Each of these cells give rise to 4 to 5 dendrites, and they have synaptic contact with mossy fiber input. These are the mossy fibers. These dendrites have a connection with mossy fibers. These are the mossy fibers. These are the mossy fibers. You can see their axons. These are their axons pass into molecular layer. Their axons pass into molecular layer and they bifurcate. Those are the 3 layers of cerebellar cortex. There are 3 functional areas in the cerebellar cortex. First one is the cortex of vermis. This part is the vermis, cortex of vermis. Then second one is the intermediate zone of cerebellar hemispheres. Then third one is the lateral zone of cerebellar hemispheres. Cortex of vermis responsible for movements of long axis of the body. Cortex of vermis responsible for movements of long axis of the body, such as neck, shoulders, thorax, abdomen and hips. Intermediate zone is the immediate lateral part to the vermis. Immediate lateral part to the vermis, which controls muscles of distal parts of the limbs, especially hands and feet. Then the lateral zone of cerebellar hemispheres responsible for planning sequential movements of entire body. Lateral zone responsible for planning sequential movements of entire body and involves with conscious assessment of movement errors. Then let's look about the intracerebellar nuclei. Intracerebellar nuclei are a mass of grey matter. They are masses of grey matter. They are embedded in white matter of the cerebellum. Here you can see these are the nuclei. These are the nuclei, and this is the white matter. This is the outer grey matter. There are 4 nuclei in each side of the midline. They are from lateral to medial. Dentate nuclei. Here, dentate nuclei. This is the dentate nuclei. Then you have emboliform nuclei. These are the emboliform nuclei. Then you have globose nucleus. These two are globose nucleus. Then in the midline, you have fastigial nucleus. These are the fastigial nucleus. From lateral to medial, dentate nucleus, emboliform nucleus, globose nucleus, and fastigial nucleus. As you can see here, the dentate nucleus is the largest nucleus. It has a shape of crumpled bag with an opening facing medially. Efferent fibers that leave the nucleus through the opening to form a large part of superior cerebellar peduncle. Emboliform nucleus is ovoid in shape and it lies medial to dentate nucleus. Then the globose nucleus consists of one or more rounded cell groups. As you can see here, it lies medial to emboliform nucleus. Then fastigial nucleus lies near the midline of the vermis, close to the roof of fourth ventricle. This is the fourth ventricle. This is the roof of fourth ventricle. Larger than globose nucleus. You can see it is larger than globose nucleus. In the white matter, this is the white matter, there are three groups of fibers. They are, first one, intrinsic fibers, then afferent fibers, then efferent fibers. Intrinsic fibers do not leave the cerebellum, but they connect different regions of the cerebellum. Intrinsic fibers, they do not leave the cerebellum. Some interconnects folia and vermis of same side, others connect two cerebellar hemispheres together. But the afferent fibers, it forms a greater part of the white matter which passes cerebellar cortex. They enter the cerebellum mainly through inferior and middle cerebellar peduncles. In the cerebellum, there are three peduncles as superior, middle and inferior. Afferent fibers enter through efferent inferior and middle cerebellar peduncles. Inferior and middle cerebellar peduncles. Then efferent fibers, they commence as axons of Purkinje cells of cerebellar cortex. Then those efferents from dentate, emboliform and globose nuclei leave the cerebellum through superior cerebellar peduncle. Efferents leave the cerebellum through superior cerebellar peduncle. But efferents from fastigial nucleus passes through inferior cerebellar peduncle. Efferents from dentate, emboliform and globose nuclei passes through the superior cerebellar peduncle, but efferents from fastigial nucleus passes through the inferior cerebellar peduncle. Then afferent fibers can be divided again into two types as Climb-in fibers and mossy fibers. Climb-in fibers and mossy fibers. Afferent fibers can be divided into two types as Climb-in fibers and mossy fibers. Here you can see mossy fiber. Here you can see Climb-in fiber. Climb-in fibers are the terminal fibers of olivocerebellar tracts. Olivocerebellar tracts. They pass through granular layer of the cortex. And terminate in the molecular layer by dividing repeatedly. You can see in this picture. One Purkinje neuron synapses with only one Climb-in fiber, but one Purkinje fiber synapses with one Climb-in fiber. But one Climb-in fiber make synapses with 1 to 10 Purkinje fibers. Here, one Purkinje fiber synapses with one Climb-in fiber, but one Climb-in fiber makes contact with 1 to 10 Purkinje fibers. Then mossy fibers. These mossy fibers are the terminal fibers of all other cerebellar afferent tracts. They exert much more diffuse excitatory effect. One single mossy fiber can stimulate thousands of Purkinje cells through granular cells. There are three cerebellar peduncles. Cerebellar peduncles connected to posterior aspect of the brainstem by three symmetrical bundles of nerve fibers called superior, middle and inferior cerebellar peduncles. It is connected to midbrain by superior cerebellar peduncle. Then cerebellum connected to pons by in middle cerebellar peduncle. It is connected to medulla oblongata by inferior cerebellar peduncle, medulla oblongata, pons, and the midbrain. There are three cerebellar afferent pathways. Those are cortico-pontocerebellar pathway, cerebro-olivocerebellar pathway, cerebro-reticulocerebellar pathway. Cortico-pontocerebellar pathway is the first one. Second one is cerebro-olivocerebellar pathway. Third one, cerebro-reticulocerebellar pathway. In cortico-pontocerebellar pathway, here this pathway is the cortico-pontocerebellar pathway. You can see fibers arise from the frontal, parietal, temporal, occipital lobes of the cerebral cortex, and they pass through the corona radiata, internal capsule, and pontine nucleus and terminate in the cerebellum. Here it crosses the midline and end up in the opposite cerebellum, opposite hemisphere of the cerebellum. It goes through the middle cerebellar peduncle. Next one is the cerebro-olivocerebellar pathway. This pathway is the cerebro-olivocerebellar pathway. You can see those fibers arise from the frontal, parietal, occipital, temporal lobes of the cerebral cortex and descend through corona radiata, internal capsule, and terminates bilaterally here, terminate bilaterally on inferior olivary nucleus. These are the inferior olivary nucleus. They crosses the midline. You can see it has been crosses the midline and enter to opposite cerebellar hemisphere through inferior cerebellar peduncle. End as climbing fibers in the cerebellar cortex. Then the last one is cerebro-reticulocerebellar pathway. Here this pathway is the cerebro-reticulocerebellar pathway. Those fibers arise from the many areas of cerebral cortex, particularly from sensory motor area. Then those fibers ended up in the reticular formation on same side as well as the opposite side. Reticular formation here, this is the reticular formation on same side as well as the opposite side. This connection between cerebrum and cerebellum is important in control of voluntary movements. Then next one is cerebellar efferent fibers. Efferent fibers from the cerebellum connects with red nucleus, thalamus, vestibular complex, and reticular formation. So there are four pathways. First one, globose embolism, rubral pathway. Second one is dendrothalamic pathway. Third one is fastigial vestibular pathway. Fourth one is fastigial reticular pathway. Globose emboliform rubral pathway. The axon starts from globose and emboliform nucleus. Then they goes through superior cerebellar peduncle. Then cross the midline to opposite side in the decussation of superior cerebellar peduncle. Then synapse in opposite red nucleus. Gives access to rubrospinal tract. Again cross the midline to opposite side. Here, in 2 steps, it crosses to opposite side. Therefore, this pathway is responsible for the motor influence of the same side of the body. Finally, it influences same side of the body. You have to remember that. Then next pathway is the dendrothalamic pathway. You can see fibers starting from the dentate nucleus and goes through the superior cerebellar peduncle, cross the midline to opposite side in the decussation of the superior cerebellar peduncle, and synapse in the ventrolateral nucleus of the thalamus to opposite side. Here those fibers goes to the thalamus and terminate in the motor area of the cerebral cortex. Dendrothalamic pathway also coordinate muscle activities on the same side of the body. Previously, globose emboliform rubral pathway also controls same side of the body. Dendrothalamic pathway also controls the same side of the body. Here you can see fastigioreticular tract. The fibers starting from the fastigial nucleus goes through the inferior cerebellar peduncle to the reticular formation and reticulospinal tract. Actions of those neurons influence spinal segmental motor activity through reticulospinal tract. Then the functions of the cerebellum. Cerebellum receives afferent information concerning voluntary movements, balance and sight. There is no direct influence on lower motor neurons but exerts its influence indirectly through the cerebral cortex and brainstem. It influences skeletal muscle activity of the same side of the body. Always remember, it influences the skeletal muscle activity of the same side of the body, but not able to initiate skeletal muscle activity. Cerebellum cannot initiate skeletal muscle activity. No effect on smooth muscle activity. It coordinates reflexes and voluntary muscle activity, maintains body posture, permits smooth voluntary movements, maintain equilibrium of the body. In the clinical aspects of cerebellum, there are several signs and symptoms in cerebellar lesion. First one is hypotonia, then postural changes and alteration of the gait. Postural changes and alteration of gait. Then ataxia. Ataxia means disturbance of voluntary movement. Then fourth one, dysdiadochokinesia. Dysdiadochokinesia. Then next one is disturbances of reflexes, nystagmus and dysarthria. You can detect ataxia by asking the patient to do finger nose test and heel shin test. So that's all about cerebellum. Thank you for watching.